You're listening to the Art of Making Home podcast with Sandro Stefanucci of Abstract Homes. He is a builder with over 37 years of experience in the industry. This series shows you the construction industry from the contractor's perspective. In addition, we will be discussing challenges that we have encountered and what other industry professionals can learn from those stories. We'll be covering such topics that many people do not consider before building, like what your property can allow. Is your property located on a steep hill? What will your municipality enable you to construct? It might not be as cut and dry as you think. So let's get the conversation started.
Hello, beautiful people. It's Sandro Stefanucci from Abstract Homes and Renovations. I want to welcome Damon on our podcast today, but I wanted to let everybody know our passion at Abstract Homes really is to have homeowners better informed when they're making decisions with, whether they're renovating, building, or who they're going to use on their projects. And I've seen some crazy stuff over the years, almost 40 years now in the industry. And I just think knowledge is king. And we just want people to be more informed and make better decisions if they're renovating or building. So again, I want to welcome Damon on our podcast. He's a younger fella that has a home in Vancouver here. It's got a Heritage B status. He just about finished building a laneway. I'm going to let him tell the story.
We lived in an area of Vancouver called Douglas Park previously and had bought a house that required quite a bit of work in Mount Pleasant. We were having a baby and it was on its way. And so we decided to just unload everything, liquidate from real estate, go and rent a property right next door to my in-laws. So we were in a pretty fortunate spot. And then the home of our dreams fell into our lap about 2 months before our daughter was born. And we love character homes. We love the style of this particular property. We knew it was a pretty hefty price point, but we just thought about how amazing it would be to raise our daughter in such a great community. So we took the leap and we jumped in. And what I had mentioned to you, Sandro, is you make decisions based on all the people that are supporting you. And at the time, I have a realtor who, was supporting us in terms of how to negotiate a deal and giving us some ideas as to what might be possible with the property. And my wife and I have renovated in the past and have had overall okay experiences doing that. And so we knew that we wanted to do some work to the property. We knew that if we could add an additional rental unit by having the laneway home, it would certainly help with our ability to cash flow our mortgage. So that was an important element, probably the first thing that we wanted to jump on. So we engaged an architect as part of the whole purchase to just say, is this feasible? And so we jumped in head first, bought the home, started with planning on the laneway. The next phase of our development plan would be to then fully renovate the home. And so that's where we're at now. So we've completed the laneway. Laneway's done, ready to be rented out anytime now. And now we've completed the design phase with our architect, but we didn't really have much support, or let's say we didn't really engage a builder to support us with the feasibility of taking a 115-year-old house and turning it into this dream home.
Right.
So that's where we're at today.
I find that challenge. We've talked on previous podcasts in regards to having a builder on board sooner than later. Houses are getting complicated. Even the permitting processes are complicated. And there's things that other builders don't necessarily know. Like some builders are specialized just in new homes only, but not necessarily renovations and stuff. So I think finding a fit, what it is that you want to do and finding the right person and get them on board even before you buy the house. Like you talked about, we have an inspector. The inspectors, they kind of just focus on the immediate stuff that's kind of right there in their face, but they're not really going to be able to tell you how much it's going to cost to fix it or what you need to do to fix it, right? They can just point stuff out, but that doesn't really go deep enough, I think. And I think that's what you're saying. Is like there's just no real depth into being able for you to make a decision on that. You could have made a different decision maybe with this house. Am I hearing that in that sense, or what do you think?
Yeah, exactly that. So the inspectors, they come in. Is this house about to collapse on you? No. Is this going to be insurable, right? Or is there asbestos in the attic? Is there knob and tube wiring? Is there all of these things that could be quite detrimental to you just completing on the purchase?
Right.
That's their whole intent, is to uncover that. And so if you're going into something where, if you're looking at a home, and so the property that we own, it's 115 years old, it's had renovations done over time, none of which probably were with any permits. If the goal is to modernize the home and make it a safe, livable space, who's there to support you to tell you what's realistic?
Right.
An architect is going to say, well, based on developing a property in the city or based on the existing floor plan of this, here are the things that you could do. But they don't necessarily get as deep as what is the condition of your foundation or what are the other elements that could become a big surprise as to whether or not you'd actually want to pursue this and go ahead with the reno.
Right.
I think that's where we're at now. Having interest rates rise as much as they have definitely starts to make you think twice about, do I really want to fork out much more money for this?
Right.
Whether I can get more money for it, it's going to cost me a lot more to do it.
Right.
So is this still worth it? Is I think kind of where we're at. I think we're still willing to take the leap, and it might just be a little bit more delayed right now. But had we have had someone at that time, that would have been invaluable, right? To someone that could actually physically tour the space with us and point out, if you're thinking of doing this, this could be a problem, or you should prepare for this expense.
When I came to visit your house the other night, the foundation was like on the older home. It's probably one of the worst foundations I think I've seen, in terms of they use extremely big rock for their foundation walls on the mix there, and the gravel and the cement is actually eroding, and there's very big pockets, and there's some quite big fractures. There's two that were really big on the one side of the house, which I think can be repaired, but you definitely want to look below that. And a lot of times they never put actual footings in. It was just a wall sitting on top of dirt and not necessarily on hard pan, which a lot of even contractors that build new stuff don't even know that. Right. So again, like I've done so many rentals, especially on these older homes, I know that off the bat, so I kind of know what to look for. Again, like I said, it's imperative nowadays that people, again, they're listening to this podcast and maybe a homeowner thinking about building or renovating, they get somebody involved as a builder that knows his stuff to look at these homes and give you potentials. Not saying that you shouldn't buy the home because there's a crack in the foundation. It's not like the end of the world. It can be fixed. But those kind of would probably guide you, I think, better in your decision. How much money I got to spend? What's important? Like, a foundation is pretty important, right? You would want to get that fixed up. And now you spent a ton of money on other things. I don't know if I got a whole bunch of money to investigate this wall and do what it needs to get fixed. It might have to sit for a little bit longer.
Absolutely. Yeah, just knowing, right? And so as opposed to it becoming more, and by the way, I know you wanted to do these really nice things on the inside of this home, but this is something that you really need to fix because you could do all this work, but this is affecting the quality of and the integrity of the actual house.
Right.
Yeah, things like that would be helpful. I think we also talked about, what are the three things, for instance, I've tried to boil it down to three things that you would prioritize to just maintain the home. So before we even start renovating the home, what are the things that someone should be looking out for or should have concern with? And you pointed out a lot of areas where water seep in and can cause other issues or vegetation. So I thought that was really helpful. Yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit more about what some people can maybe keep an eye out for when they're looking at purchasing.
I believe that you had a good experience with the builder that built you the laneway, correct? Yeah. And for people that don't know, typically the services, so you have to run new services to your laneway. So you're dealing with water service, storm lines, sewer lines, and your water upgrade. Typically, it's an 1.5 inch or a 40 mil line or a 2-inch line, water line that goes to the laneway. What we've done in the past and what I continue to do is I always give the homeowner the option for those stubs to be stubbed into the old home. You're already digging up along the side of the house, whether it's a 3-foot or 5-foot setback. I think yours is 5-foot side yard on there, which gives you more room to play with. But it's easy to bring that water line into the home, which doesn't really cost a whole lot of money. It's money well spent. And now you already have the new service and the ability to sprinkler your old home, right? Because a lot of these old homes are they can be fire hazards, really. And I've seen a lot of them, and there's some crazy stuff done there. But yeah, I think you might have probably went for that. Say it's going to cost you maybe $1,500. And now you have a new water line, new water service into your old home.
Right. Yeah. Well, if let's say, for instance, knowing that we would be renovating later and doing likely a full gut, if we had to dig back down to do that, I'd be pretty annoyed. So yeah, had it have been brought up in advance, it'd be great.
Right. And another point that I brought out too is they've already had the side yard dugout, which is right up to your foundation, and particularly the spot that we saw that there was 2 good cracks and plus the erosion of the cement mix in between the rock, that does it have a footing?
Right.
Doesn't it?
Right.
It'd just be nice to know.
Right.
It doesn't seem like anybody knows or even brought hey, you know what? You don't have a footing here.
Yeah.
Or there's some cracks, or even brought that attention to you when they were working on the side of the house. So, I'm not bashing the builder, but I'm just saying those kind of the key points that we like to bring up to people as we're doing this and point out that kind of stuff. That could have done, again, beforehand when we even were looking at the house to buy it.
Yeah.
All right. And I know you like your wisteria plant that's at the front of the house. I always want to try to get the vegetation, and I tell people all the time, I'm constantly having to deal with it, get the vegetation off the lumber because it's going to rot out, and especially, like the wisteria, it's a climbing type of plant that will get in, but it'll actually crack blocks, like concrete blocks. It'll split them if you let them grow and stuff like that, which now okay, well, we can trim it back now, so make sure that it doesn't get into the growths or in between your trim. Those are things to watch out because that'll actually pop it and it gets moisture inside, and then you can get water ingress. That's the problem. So, but you can still maintain and keep that wisteria plant and just maintain it properly. So you can continue to check it, which you wouldn't have done unless somebody pointed it out to you.
Yeah, so I think, whether you're naive and, especially like no one necessarily gives you a manual when you're buying a 115-year-old home, especially when it's got like unique characteristic like a giant wisteria plant that's climbing all over the side of the home. Something that, you look at it and you go, get it away from the lumber. At the same time, too, it's like, this is just one of those pieces of the home, right? So it's worthwhile to keep, but so long as you're doing all the necessary things to, maintain and make sure that it's not going to cause some really detrimental issues later on.
Right.
So that was really helpful as well, because a lot of that's almost invisible, right? That part of it, keeping the vegetation away from it and the moisture that it introduces. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about, well, does this look good? Maybe I got to trim it back, but does this look good until, well, now I wish I had done it because, 2-3 years later, this is actually really becoming a massive pain point. It's really costly to try and fix all this stuff now.
Right. And you can saw the damage, I think, previous damage that had caused on the stone that was probably put in there, 115 years ago was on that, and where the repairs were done on those and not done that great. And then around that area, the flashing where the decks are. Anyways, there's just a lot of, I think a lot of places where that would come in handy for a homeowner as a builder, contractor that is familiar with the homes in general, older homes, whatever it may be that you're going to do renovating contractor specializing in that kind of stuff. And having him on board, you probably would have paid, say a couple $1,000 for that input, while you're also looking at somehow looking at what the possible problems could be down the road for you, because it can be costly for sure, especially if you're dealing with a foundation. And then that could steer you maybe a little different in your design or the scope of your design, which you already have now, I think already. So is probably from the sounds of it, you're going to be putting that on hold now. It didn't mean that you wouldn't have bought the house anyways, but at least you could have been more informed about how much you really need or what the potential of the amount of money you're going to spend to actually get this place where it should be, to bring it up to where you think it should be.
For me, and what I found really great about having you come by is that it's one thing to just look at the plans and to say it's probably budgeting wise, it might cost between this range. It's another thing to say, that's to do what you intended to do, but there's all of these other elements that are not being taken into account just in the plans alone. And so you need to be prepared that this is going to cost you $100,000 more or $200,000 more, because that's because the last thing I'd want to do is we get into a place where we started to do the work only to uncover these problems, and then you start to see I can't actually pay for all of this now. Right. And then we got a half completed home, or, it's not complete. And so that's the worst place to be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Another question. Did you guys do any asbestos testing before you bought the house?
We did not, no.
Right. Which could have been another big factor, because some of these old houses either sometimes they have almost zero, or someone's done something in the 70s and 80s that had asbestos in it and then, or covered it up. Right. Asbestos found in homes, it can be in different products. It can be in the stucco, there's fiber. So asbestos itself is a very fibrous, and it attaches, it's a binder. They always used it, the Egyptians used it a few thousand years ago when they mixed their mortars and build their pyramids, it's just a binder, and it's in a lot of different products. And it basically, if you breathe it, it's such a small particle that if you breathe it, it sticks inside your lungs and you can't get rid of it. It's permanent in there, so you can and it can scratch and damage your lungs and even cause cancer. But if you do not touch the asbestos, you're fine. But I find that a lot of people don't care, and they know that they have it. They'll just start tearing things apart and not really think about the implications, right? So, anyways, you can't do that. So the best thing to do is to be informed. At least if a person knows, as Damon knows beforehand, as he purchasing it, I got asbestos all over this house. I got to think twice. Maybe it might not have changed his mind, but he knew that the implications could be, say, it could cost you $60,000 to get rid of all this asbestos that you got in here. It will change your design scope, I think, somewhat, unless you have endless cash. But at least you can make an informed decision, and that's what really I want, is people to make an informed decision on what they're doing and purchasing. It's not small change anymore to build or renovate.
Right.
And then that's a huge cost, right? It can be.
Yeah.
Right.
As you know, I work in mortgage brokering, so I help people with purchasing homes. One thing that I actually have never heard anyone ever do is asbestos testing before purchasing a place. So right now, generally when you purchase a place, it comes with a property disclosure statement. A lot of homes in Vancouver have asbestos in them. Most people would just mark as does not know because they haven't done the testing on it.
Right.
But if that is something that can be done, like how quickly would testing a sample for asbestos or, doing that, how long would that take, and what would that usually cost?
You can get testing done in 24 hours. You just pay more money for it, or you can wait 3 or 4 days to get the testing. So, and depending on how many samples you have, obviously, well, typically on a house like that, you're probably in 35 samples, right? People don't want, a little bit of drywall taken out or something, but, if you can do it inconspicuously by, going behind a wall in a corner or in a closet and stuff like that and taking some samples like that. But anyways, and then you can also test for lead and those kinds of things too, right? Especially knowing that you're going to do a renovation on it.
Yeah.
So
that would be a huge plus. I've never heard of anyone doing that.
It's been great talking to you, Damon. If you had any advice for a homeowner that's listening and wanting to renovate their home, what do you think would be the one most important factor or something that you have to do this?
Yeah, great question. I'd say it would probably be having the right team around you, not just relying on a realtor who's renovated a couple of homes before to tell you a bathroom reno is going to cost you $8,000, right? Somebody who actually is working in the industry, who's just recently done something and knows kind of the quality that you're looking for and, the time frames that you'll be working with. Having your general contractor in hand, having an architect or designer available to really help with guiding you through it, because I see so many, at least my own clients, kind of gone through this before. And when I first started renovating our, first place, and kind of like learn these things, but don't just rely on one person's opinion on what it is that they think you can do. Have the entire team prepared and ready to go,
right,
so that they can give you the honest truth and you can really manage your expectations.
Well, thanks, Damon, for being with us on this podcast today. Damon, by the way, is a mortgage broker, as you know. We talked about his Pilot Mortgage Group.
Yes, Pilot Mortgage Group.
And if people want to get a hold of you, your email.
Yeah, they can reach me at Damon, DAMON, at wearepilot.com.
Awesome. And also, I want the listeners to know that we at Abstract here also do, we've been out with realtors before and viewing properties and giving our assessment on the particular type of home and the potential for anything that could be other than damages or potentials down the road for costs, whether, say the foundation is bad or something like that. And so at least the people, again, are more informed what they purchase before they purchase it, and we have that service available.
Thank you for listening to The Art of Making Home. Make sure you follow us on one of your favorite platforms to listen to podcasts, either it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or many more. You can find all our information at anchor.fm/artofhome. And if you want to email us as well for any questions from our guests or Sandro about building your home, all you have to do is send us a message at the Art of Making Home Podcast at gmail.com. We'll talk to you next time.